capitalist in China. His firm has helped hundreds of companies across the Pacific Rim. Among them are some of China's most famous companies today and leading companies tomorrow, such as Lenovo, Soho, Aigo, and Datang Telecom. Join us on Up Close to experience Peter Liu's amazing life stories.
China's #1 venture capitalist, and he is the man behind the scenes of some of China's most famous companies today and leading companies tomorrow. With his firm, W.I. Harper, Peter Liu is striving to generate excitement and create exponential growth in China's economy. And now, let's take an up-close look at Peter Liu. A venture capitalist who has helped thousands of companies across the Pacific Rim. An opinion leader who has pushed the philosophy of bridge building beyond the business regime. He is Peter Liu, China's #1 venture capitalist and director of the Committee of 100. Please join me in welcoming Peter Liu to the Up Close studio. Welcome.
Thank you.
Please have a seat. Peter, you are considered a bridge builder between the U.S. and China, and your firm can be considered the vehicle. W.I. Harper is one of the first U.S.-based venture capital firms focused on China. Can you tell me a little bit about how your personal history led you to working in this region?
Well, we started this venture capital, concept in Asia. Actually, back in 1985. I was invited by the Dr. K.T. Lee of Taiwan. At that time, they just started the high-tech, infrastructure outlet over there. They need the U.S. concept of venture capital. So we were invited to Taiwan, start there, and help to build up the infrastructure from 1985 to 1995.
In Taiwan?
In Taiwan. First. In 1992, I was coming back here in Beijing, it's my hometown. I'm the seventh.
Beijing is your hometown.
I'm the 7th generation here, so I'm the hometown folks here. So through that contest, I met Minister Xiang Huaicheng. At the time, he was the first Deputy Minister of Finance. With his encouragement, so we actually replicate that model in China, starting in 1992.
Now, to do this type of work, venture capital requires a lot of relationships and partnerships. And I know you spent a lot of time here in China forging some very important relationships, and you have partnerships with large companies and very famous companies such as Soho, the real estate company, Datang Telecom, Aigo, and Lenovo, which of course requires no introduction. How did you get involved with working with Lenovo?
Well, I started in the mid-90s. Lenovo, I remember, made their first trip to U.S. and they went to attend this Contact show in 1996. We were the host company, and they need a lot of help during that period of time. So they are trying to learn the American way of, management, how to, sort of, transfer their business into U.S., expand that business. And we actually invite them to see all the our portfolio company and get them exposed to the inner circle, in the Silicon Valley. Right. I remember Yang Yuanqing at the time. He was a youngster, about 10 years ago, and he led the 18 members delegation. That's how we start that relationship. Through there, we give them a lot of strategic advice. In 1997, 98, and we helped Lenovo actually made the first visit to Taiwan. And through that process, I think Lenovo just adopting some of the new concept, new business model.
Right.
And today you see they're so successful.
What was the situation then, and what were they hoping to learn by going to the U.S. and going to Taiwan?
I think the time, they really want to expand their business into U.S. And I think the time you saw the #1 PC company was Acer. So Stan Shi is a very good friend of mine. And so I called him Stan, I said, Stan, maybe you can share your experience with Lenovo. And that time, Stan just had a co-branding in '96 with Lenovo and collapsed. And Stan is truly a visionary, and he's a really a good fellow. And he kind of said, well, after we had the failure, we arranged a dinner in San Francisco that time. I still remember Liu Chuanzi came to San Francisco at his room. Stan Shi shared his view of how to develop business in the U.S. His first question asked Liu Chuanzi says, do you have a deep pocket? Do you have a few $100 million to really throw at the U.S. for that expansion? And Liu says, definitely no, right? So, I mean, that really, through that meeting, I think changed Liu's direction.
Right.
Into U.S. Then 2 years later, after their visit to Taiwan, they made actually major decision in Taiwan. After they visit all the Taiwanese OEM manufacturer, they decided to abandon the expansion plan to U.S., focus into China, penetrating China.
Right, and really gain market share and be the #1 in China.
That's a focus play and right business model. Today they become the leader.
Right. Now, critical to that was the introduction that you made between the president of Lenovo, Liu Chuanzi, and Acer president Stan Shi. Now, we did talk to Acer president Stan Shi, and let's listen to see what he had to say.
Sure.
Actually, in '97, because my book called Re-Engineering Acer just published, and most of the managers in Beijing, they read about that. So they are very interested to know more detail. Especially in '97, '98, Acer relative doing more business in United States. But unfortunately, the more we do, the more loss we have. So we recognize it's a very, very challenging market for a company from Asia. In 1998, they also have a delegation special with the Acer headquarters. In that time, again, we share a lot of experience. Beijing just consider maybe they should give up the international market in the short period of time and focus on China market. I think that helped Beijing really become a leading brand name in China. Today become a global brand. Now I am so happy to have this opportunity to share some of my experience with the Mr. Liu of the Beijing and Peter Liu.
So for you, it's all about bringing people together and the sharing of knowledge. What I find really interesting, though, is that Acer and Lenovo today, they are competitors. Yeah. So why was Stan Shi so willing to give up all of this knowledge and help Lenovo?
I think Stan is a very unusual person. He's a true strong leader. He has this broad view, and he always likes to share. Okay, and I have really a lot of respect to him. I remember the time when Legends 18 members visit Taiwan. Their CEO, I cannot name, it's a very important guy. He said, we're definitely not to let Lenovo to visit us. So I called Stan Shi. I said, Stan, can you help? Stan said, I'll be more than happy to share anything, even open the factory, whatever they need. So that's, to me, is a between the strip. You need a people like that. He's a special person. Right. I really been very grateful. I think the Lenovo show award, Stan, Stan is like ambassador And he did this marvelous job. It was the right timing, and I really appreciate he's a wonderful guy.
Right, and it's a cross straits concern for businesses.
Yes, he did that. He
right.
did that. Yes, he made it. We call it a great contribution to Lenovo's success.
Absolutely.
It was that special occasion.
Right. With the extent of your experience and your background here in China, we could probably talk for hours,
Sure.
If not days, about everything that you've been involved in. But unfortunately, we only have 45 minutes today.
Okay.
So I'd like to start with something that I know is very dear to your heart, and that is 3G, or third generation mobile technology. Now, to begin with, what exactly is 3G, and why is it such a hot term nowadays?
Well, 3G really represents China, next wave. And we start with a little company in the States called Seawell. And Guanghai is the founder of the Seawell. And I met him in 1996 at a contact show, at the lobby of the hotel, 11 a.m. That's how we started China 3G. And so in my heart, it was because our venture capital investment model, you're always trying to find a successful model to fund an entrepreneur with a technology background and bring them back to China. So we met Guanghai and his partner, Chen Wei, the CEO of Beijing Xinwei at the time. And they really, like just any other startup, entrepreneur, they need funding.
Right.
And they have some small funding from Ministry of Post and Telecommunication before they merged, become MMI. And they funded like $2.5 million. So I saw if the Chinese government supported, we should support it. Being a Chinese American would say we support it too.
Right.
And they were very hardworking, very intelligent. We spent we met like 11 p.m. and we finished the meeting like at 3 a.m. I remember. That's something like I'm going to write about it. And through that content, it become today. It become this national program. Okay, 3G is very important to China. If they deploy, China deploy the TDS, CDMA, the 3G standard, it will represent 1% of GDP of China.
1% of the GDP.
It's very important. The deployment process is very complicated. People still debate about it. But we're the one actually did this. Okay,
Right.
we licensed. I think Guanghai is here. Maybe you can share some of their experience, with us in here too.
Yeah. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about this first meeting that you had with Peter, and how did W.I. Harper support you through the development and the research phases?
As Peter mentioned, I think we met at, we were introduced actually, me and Wei Chen, we were basically, all based in Austin. I was a professor at the University of Austin, Texas Austin, and Wei Chen was working at Motorola. But when we met with Peter, we were introduced by another venture capitalist called Bob Lee at that time. And so he introduced us and he said, come to Las Vegas and we're going to meet with Peter Liu. He's been doing a lot of business in China and he's very interested in China. And so I went to the lobby. There was the one hotel we went to. That was at like 11, around 11, 12 between. And so I was trying to call this Peter's room. I said, I talked with, I pick up the hotel phone and then try to say, okay, I want you connected to the, Peter Liu's room. And then he was just sitting beside me and said, I'm Peter Liu. so somehow it's very interesting. And then, so we basically say, okay, great. Then we introduced each other and then he was saying like what you're doing. And so we spent like the rest of like 5 hours talking about this and pounding up these ideas, and everybody got excited, and then I think we start from there and we follow on, and I think that leads to like Peter's the first investment from really the venture capital into the Seawell, and that's also the last one that we got from all the investments. So since then we've been doing. It took a long time, and Peter, I think it was a very visionary. He's completely different from other VCs. In fact, the person who introduced us to Peter, called Bob Lee, did not really invest in us. And Peter really, started. He saw this as a very good opportunity because at that time, it's not like right now. Everyone knows, China's hot. There's a lot of venture capital money flowing in. At that time, people are very scared. Most people are very scared about investing into China because they don't know what's going on and they don't know much about it.
Now, I know this has been a very long-term project for both of you. It's been 8 years. You're on your 9th year. And At the same time, the US has already adopted 3G technology. Parts of the EU, I believe, has adopted 3G technology. So I have to ask both of you, why does China need its own 3G standard and 3G technology? Why is it important to us?
I think 3G, again, you know, give the China this leapfrog to the global market. Again, in 1998, thanks to Guanghai and the team, and this was the first ever the technology in the 3G standard being approved by the ITU. It's a Qualcomm, Nokia, and the TDS. Actually, it's created by the Guanghai's team, you know, out of US Seawell team. Okay, right. This is again. Let me kind of go back to your earlier question. Is that venture capital investment is with the right technology, right people, and you stay focused. And I guess one of the major success factors with this is we grew together, and all our team members has a passion to do that business in China, and it was that was the key. And many times, you know, I've been challenged by my board members. Say, well, how can we take so long? I guess all of us been challenged by Chinese government. By, you know, the first time, you know, I remember Mr. Zhou Huang. He's like my big brother. Now we call him big brother. The first time he met me, he said, "You're a venture capitalist. You are we call the hit and run. You probably make a good profit and then leave the country." I say, "No, I'm going to make a contribution to China." That's how we started. And you really, if I look back, you keep things simple and you stay focused.
Right.
That's how important it is.
And as we said before, this has taken 8 years. A normal investment is about 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, 3 to 5
so
years.
you got a lot of pressure from your board.
Oh, you bet.
About this project.
Every time at a board meeting, we're talking about Guanghai's company. They had to, I mean, again, the team has to come to our board, make a numerous presentation, you know. I mean, that's like a team, you know. And a lot of time, you know, there's a Guanghai mission, you know, early on we have some of the investors from American, and they don't have this vision. And then halfway through, that's why we're causing some changes. Is you have to believe in what you're doing. Right. In particular in China, American public, I must say, you know, a lot of time, you know, because it's a culture thing. So you have to understand the culture. And China today, if you look at all the successful companies, it takes them a long time. And we have to look at the entrepreneur with a good track record. A lot of time in here, they're all young startup, no track record. But some of you know our you know investment here, I just feel very proud of this investment because a young entrepreneur with a good people skill and a good track record, that leading into a our team. I think our MD David can maybe highlight some of the investment. He's our champion. He does wonderful job for us and leading a very young team. I'm most senior guy. Our average employee in China is like early 30s. So they have horsepower and did very, very good job. This venture capital business, you have to be very dedicated. We have to look at the dedicated team and with a lot of patience. Right. We're like a sideline coach. The investing company, they're players. A lot of time we deliver play, they take it, we score. A lot of time the player don't take the play, we just have to suffer.
Right. Or sometimes they might win without taking your play.
Well, it's a winning strategy is always important. It's like a coaching players. If I can exemplify, this is how we've been approached this market. It's very simple strategy.
Right. Is there a model entrepreneur, or is there an ideal person who has the propensity to succeed in building their own business?
I remember like Nan Yeast, Dean Lei started. I was there, back in the 90s, I saw him in a little room with 5 guys, and later on he moved to Beijing. Now he's representing. I was there. Just keep it simple. I would encourage you, all the entrepreneurs here in China, just believe in what you're doing and focus on it.
Right.
It's like driving a car slowly, gradually, you'll hit the destination. But don't drive to the little alley. That's all my view of my recommendation.
And because it's all about relationships, my guess is that you really need to find somebody that you trust, that you can work with.
Yeah, you got to go spend a lot of time to understand or identify those individual or the company's needs. A lot of time, we have a lot of colleagues from U.S., other VC, rush. They landed here, they see the business plan, they leave. I think a lot of time you have to understand, like our team in here, they spend a lot of time, with the entrepreneurs, the founders, meet up their wife, their girlfriends, their boyfriends, and to understand the culture, understand, they got the family support, the relative support. And it's a lot of times the entrepreneur borrow money from their relatives.
Right.
Okay, so we need to have a lot of good lists of, checkpoints. And then, after that, I think they're like part of the family. You have, it's a cohesive, you need to harmonize. A lot of time you're seeing here, the younger generation, they want a quick return. And that's very dangerous, very high risk.
Right. Maybe we can hear from David, your managing director.
Yes.
And I'd be interested to hear from him, how are things different here in China, in the VC world, versus in the U.S.?
In U.S., a lot of venture deals are done between, a few companies, club deal. Good deals will come to the table of venture capital firms. In my opinion, they tend not to work as hard. In China, you really have to go out there and seek out companies. A lot of time we use, Mr. Xu and, Mr. Charles Wu from IBM, using their connection to kind of source deals for us. But at the same time, our local team have to go out there and be very hungry. Go to the most local conferences, the events, the universities, and try to seek out these good deals. Right. And we have certain profiles for the type of entrepreneurs we look for. As Mr. Liu mentioned, right, they have to be good people. They have to be committed to the business. And also, they have to be repeat entrepreneurs. We hope that they have done something in China. Adding all the factors together. Normally, we invest in one company out of 100 that we see. And every year we see hundreds of companies. So the experience gathered and then the team that we have, everyone is completely complementary. So all that contribute, I think, to some of the good successes we have so far. But that's not enough. We're still building and China is still growing. And we believe we're positioned perfectly to kind of reap the benefit and also do some very good social work.
Thank you. I think that's very interesting, especially the point where, in the U.S., the deals come to the table. I mean, you are actively pursuing companies and opportunities to invest in. And today we have representatives from two of your portfolio companies. We have Fred Sum and Jenny Hu. And I'd like to ask you, why did you choose W.I. Harper?
Peter Liu, W.I. Harper, found me in this particular case. You cannot talk about Peter Liu without talking about the 3 Ps. Just now, Mr. Xu talked about the 3G of China. I think the 3 Ps about Peter Liu is about passion, about persistence, and about people caring. Some years ago, I think it was back in 2002 or even 2001, 4 a.m. in the morning, my phone rang, and it was Peter. I said, Peter, what are you doing 4 a.m. in the morning? He was actually thinking about a problem that he has with a company. And my company's name was W Phone before it became Payees, Payment Services. And at that time, it wasn't managed by me, it was by a bunch of entrepreneurs from Silicon Valley. And Peter was the original investor. And for one reason or another, the company did not take off as planned. And that was back in 1998, I believe. For many other PC, after 3 to 5 years of patiently waiting, other people would have given up or written off. That is the easy way out. But Peter was saying, listen, you have some experience in telecom. I've been in telecom for many, many years, 20-odd years, and I've been in China since 1980. So he said, Fred, why don't you go and take a look at this company and see whether you can do something about it? I really hate to see a good company, because of reason beyond your control, cannot do well. So to cut a long story short, I went in, I took a look, and then we decided to raise some new capital, do a restructuring, and took it to China. And today, we are doing very well in terms of payment space, working very closely with our partner, the Beijing government CapInfo, and we provide payment services with the widest range of bank connections as well as methods. So the persistence, the first one, and the passion, the falling at 4 a.m. in the morning to say, hey, Fred, think about this company. How many people actually do that? But really, about Peter Liu, he's not really a VC. I would call him a PC, people caring, all right? There's an incident that I have a very young, inexperienced team, and there was one incident that my finance person was not making such a good presentation in front of the investors and the board member. And he actually took his time out to actually tell the guy what he did wrong in the hallway. That young man came away very angry and said, gosh, I don't really need this. It's 6 p.m. in the evening and Friday, and I just got this big argument or this big comment from Mr. Liu saying that I didn't do well here and there. And I said, listen, young man, he's putting money in your pocket. People at his senior status took time out to tell you what's wrong with you. He's actually giving you a chance to do a better job, and you should go and thank him for that. So people caring and passion is really about Peter Liu.
Thank you very much. If we were going to use that analogy again of being a coach and a sideline player, I mean, you were there at every single game, basically.
Yep.
Let's hear from Jenny to see what type of support do they give you?
During the entire process, we have received a lot of support from Michael, David, and their team, especially from Mr. Liu. He helped us to get in touch with major suppliers, major contacts overseas. And not only that, they helped us through small things, especially how to manage better, how to set our strategies. My boss, Mr. Liu Chen, is a very passionate person. He's passionate about his business, and he loves to work with someone who's equal passion in him. He loves to work with someone who has belief in him. Sometimes he can be nervous about a problem in the business. He can call anyone 1 a.m. in the morning and talk for 2 hours. That's something we probably won't experience with other VCs. I think that's the most important, the caring, the support. Thanks.
Thank you. I hear two common themes. One, that you're always making phone calls at 1 a.m. to 4 a.m. And two, that you really care and you support your portfolio companies. Fred and Jenny both really emphasize that. Well, we've had a great discussion about venture capital and your role within it, your experiences and your background. Let's see what else the studio audience has to ask you.
Sure.
As a entrepreneur, I've had businesses in Europe and America. I plan on staying here for long term, and I have a few businesses I want to start. I've got background in real estate and training and IT. But how can I help, or people like me help others, encourage them towards entrepreneurship?
Well, if I call it entry level, right? If you are just new in being here in China, you're probably 2 years, and you probably know a lot of people. But I think you need to take some time to decide what you really want to do, which space, whether it's IT space or telecom space, and then you can identify the best company or some startup company. You can provide that value-added support to them. A lot of young team, our team, probably need your support. So it's just right timing for China right now for the venture investment. And with your background, I think definitely China needs you.
Now, I know, Mr. Charles Wu, you're from IBM, of course, large multinational, and I'm wondering, from your perspective, what does VC, venture capital, what type of role do they play here in China's growth?
We have a relationship with VC firms, both in China and around the world. The most important part about our relationship with VC firms, we look at them as partners at the institutional level. It's important for us to understand the trends and where the cutting-edge technologies are. Even as a company in the IT business, we don't believe that we invent everything. So it really has to be a very extensive network. We have to depend on extensive networks. And in China in particular, as Peter put it, he is the W.I. Harper firm, which he's headed, is here for the long haul, and that's important. As a company, we're here for the long haul. Nobody's here for hit and run, and hit and run, usually you miss more than you hit. But most important, I think, is on the relationship part of it. Peter and W.I. Harper has a very unique advantage over perhaps many of the other VC companies that we work with. Most importantly, Peter is definitely a visionary. He can see into the future to a great extent. And on top of that, he can really get involved in structure and put things together, and that's important rather than just throwing money at a venture and hopefully that will come around. And last but not least, is this extensive relationship makes a big difference because it's ongoing nurturing and structuring and restructuring of both the companies and also the business model makes the world of difference. But last but not least, he's a man of style. You just got to love Peter, right?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, any questions up here?
I would like to ask how it is that you got started in your role as a venture capital provider. Did you start out as a young man in this line of work, or did you move from another field of business?
I was in the managing consulting business. In the 80s, I went back home, and I went back to Taiwan. During that period of time, I met Dr. K.T. Lee. And, like any other place, right timing, right place. In that time, Dr. K.T. Lee invited me to setting up the, U.S., venture capital, concept. So I started from there. It was very simple, right timing. And with the government support, because during that period of time was, venture capital was like greenfield. It's very difficult. Ground zero, I still remember the day we started doing the first round of financing. People would say, well, you want to manage our money. Do you have any content, local networks? They say, they challenge us that we have better relationship than you in here. How can you help us? So that's how, you get started. And is like anything else, you got to go through that learning curve. We start there with government support.
All right, I have one other question for you that was submitted on our website, cctv.com, and it's from Norman Battaglia. And he says, I'm a retired Air Force officer who watches CCTV-9 regularly from Portland, Oregon, USA. In retirement, I am always looking for sound investments and can fully appreciate the growth of the new and modern China. What assurance do investors in modern China have that their investment will maintain value, be protected, and readily available?
I guess earlier I said it's a culture. You have to understand this culture to do business in China. Then you invest like our fund, we are run by all the professional managers. You got through that professional investment criteria professionally, proper screening process, then less risk.
Join us on Up Close in April. Peter Liu, China's #1 venture capitalist. Liu Hao, CEO of Zhaopin.com. Du Cong, facilitator of AIDS orphans. And Kenneth Wong, New Zealand's first Chinese male member of parliament. Up Close, the amazing stories behind fascinating people.
Following his childhood passion, he learned physics at Peking University. However, after going abroad for further study, he ended up with a JD from Yale's Law School. From lawyer to venture capitalist to today's CEO of an online recruitment website, his career path has been filled with twists and turns. Join us on Up Close next week at the same time to experience Liu Hao's amazing life stories.
Now, we've talked a lot about the work that you've done in the venture capital field. We know that you sit on the boards of many companies, but you're also involved in many social organizations. And one of the organizations that you're involved in is the Committee of 100, an organization of prominent Chinese Americans. I know you've spent a lot of time helping with the delegation when they come to China. Why is this so important to you?
I think the C100, Committee 100 is funded by Ian Pei and Yo-Yo Ma. And I think they organize it, their mission is to help to improve U.S. and China relationship. I think it's important. So I've been on the board, I serve on the board for the last 6 years. So because we have presence here in China, so we have ground troop. So the delegation coming here, we have access to a lot of people, so we enhance our activity. I think important for also the Chinese government knows the C100 can assist the government, to really bridge that gap between U.S. and China. I think all our members are all very dedicated, all the who's who. They're the opinion leaders in U.S. So I've been invited, sir, because I'm into the venture capital sector. So very proud to be part of that. And you know, I've learned a great deal out of those activities.
Right. Do you yourself have a feeling of responsibility? Like this is something that you should do, being so successful?
I want just to, I said earlier, I want to contribute. Our youngsters, we share this. I really want to help the youngster of China. I think I still remember in 1992, first time I came to Beijing, you know, Minister Chang gave us a briefing at the Ministry of Finance. I learned that there are 60 million people in China making less than $25 at that time. That's the data I have. And we have 10 members that time, so each one of us donated $2,000. So we gave it $20,000 to the state council member, then they kind of donated this to one of the schools in Yunnan. We helped to monitor. And I think that's something I really want to do to help the youngster in China. Right. I say that's the future for China. I think it's important. Right. Many of our friends, you know, all dedicated to build up school and different city, different province. I want to do that. Once I see the 3G really tape out, that's maybe I can spend more time. I want to go to maybe rural areas, you know, just like making more contribution to China.
Right. One thing that really has impressed me throughout this whole interview is the idea that I believe Fred came up with, which is PC, which is people caring. Yeah. We have another perspective on that. Let's see what he had to say.
Sure.
去年底，他的女儿结婚，啊，那么他在台湾的分公司呢，有一个司机跟了他很多年了，他出钱。 买飞机票，要请这个司机到旧金山去参加他女儿的婚礼。那么在台湾呢，也跟他很多年的一个员工，员工的儿子结婚。那么皮特刘呢，专门从旧金山飞到台北来参加他一个很普通员工的一个儿子的婚礼。 啊，我举这个事呢，为什么我说能会成为朋友？啊，在如今这种作为风险投资界当中，那么如果说的很坦率一点，绝大部分是过分的认钱，啊，那么像皮特刘这样子，不仅是这个知道怎么样做风险投资，同时的话又很有人情味的，能够做朋友的，还是为数很少。
Well, he was talking about this driver been with me for 18 years. So I saw, you know, he's part of the family, part of our success. You know, so when my daughter is married, you know, I offer him that. You know, it's part of the process. I mean, all of our, you know, members, you know, the team members, you know, they're like a part of the family. And I'm from northern China. You know, I'm Pekingese here. You know, you always have this warm heart. And always like to help people, you know. I mean, that's the nature of northern Chinese, right? So I maintain the heritage. And this is what he's talking about. I really appreciate his comment. This is not supposed to be televised.
Now, I know in our audience we have a lot of your employees, as well we have your friends that we've introduced before. I'd like to ask all of you to comment on what is it like to work with Peter? What is he like as a boss, as a colleague, as a friend?
The most important thing I learned at W. Carper is how to treat people right and how to treat entrepreneurs right. I think that's probably one of the biggest differentiating factor for us and why we have been so successful. Even if we turn down an investment, it's always done in a very humanly way, and then we always try to give them as much practical suggestions as possible.
But what is he like as a boss?
Could be very tough sometimes. You know, we get a lot of calls, you know, at random times of hours. When he wakes up, you know, and he thinks of something, he calls us. You know, but one thing is, you know, he deals with issues, not with people.
There's a lot of fun working with Mr. Liu because he has the vision and he has all kinds of stories and he has the background experience and he really loves to share that with you. I guess two things. One is that every time he comes back from a trip, wherever it is, U.S. or Europe, he brought a lot of gifts. Every time, everyone. And the second is that he has a passion and the passion that we have to learn. Well, it's kind of stay focused and stay dedicated. That's the thing that I really love. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, you two are saying I bring gift every time I come back because I developed the bad habit because I always running short of time. So it'd be better, I show something to show my appreciation. Even I bought a shirt from them, I want them to have the right dress code. Like David doesn't like to wear a tie, so I bought him a lot of tie.
Well, I know you have offices in San Francisco, Taipei, Beijing, and Singapore as well. It's funny because we talked to some of your employees, and they said you spend most of your time up in the air in an airplane.
Part of that. I would say 40% U.S., 40% Asia, 20% on the air.
Yes. Right. Will you ever find time to rest?
I do. I mean, I just, you had to do this. You needed to have it. Otherwise, you always run out of bandwidth. You are a human being. In this business, you're not genius. You're always trying to find time. And, it's all this year, all my good friends, good company, good employee, good family member, my daughter, my son, my wife, they keep me up there. So I really appreciate that.
And will you ever consider retirement?
I hope when the 3G really deployed, I told our team, when the 3G really deployed in China, maybe that's the time I start thinking of getting. A lot of our friends say you never retire. I say I would do that.
I have a feeling you're not going to ever retire in the traditional